Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara. And today I'd like to talk about a very important concept, and that is the concept of empire. Let's see what we have here in Wikipedia. On that concept. Okay, here it is. And let's start with this definition, but I'll go to dictionary terms as well. The reason I want to clarify many of the political terms defining the nature of political governments is because today we use the term globalism. And there's a lot of confusion over that term, globalism, what it really is. And there is a justification of a lot of concern because the term globalism, by definition, is a form of confusion because the earth is made up of many countries, many regions, has complicated history, and suddenly we have globalism, and all kinds of things are justified by that concept as a legitimate way to extract resources and life from different regions. So we have to go back to clarification of history of political entities, and then we'll deal with the concept of globalism in that context, because we need to have order in our international relationships, not confusion and chaos. Like the concept of globalism is used to transfer huge treasuries from one country to another country. That is absolutely totally unacceptable, because that causes injustice in divine law, because heritage from specific regions cannot be passed on from one generation to another, and instead is transferred onto other countries, other regions, other peoples who have no bloodline connections. So it's a new concept that was created quite recently, and as far as I'm concerned, it's confusion. And I like international trade, I like multinational corporations, but I don't like confusion, and neither does God. God is not author of confusion. So let's go back to understanding the nature of political entities. And the reason I'm starting with empire is because it's a concept very familiar to me. My grandmother was born in Russian Empire, and I always was fascinated by history of Russian Empire, and till the horrible things that Lenin did to Romanov family, it was a very successful place to live and to prosper. And let's look at the definition that is in Wikipedia. Here it is. Okay. So, an empire is a sovereign state functioning as an aggregate of nations or people that are ruled over by an emperor or another kind of monarch. The territory and population of an empire is commonly of greater extent than that one of a kingdom. So in this particular definition, we have empire defined as an aggregate of nations. So it's not just one nation, it's many nations. And it has one unifying authority. But that unifying authority does not deny the nations, but creates measures that would satisfy all nations within a context of an empire. So, how is this different from globalism? Empire is made up of many nations and recognizes those nations and recognizes that all of those nations need the right measure of resources, money, applications of justice, applications of tranquility. Versus globalism doesn't care about nations. Globalism just wants to shift all the resources all over the world without any consideration to long-term needs and traditions of particular nations. So in this particular way, it wipes out identities of all nations. So obviously, the application of the concept of empire is far superior to the concept of globalism. We'll be dealing a lot with the concept of globalism because we do have uh, wonderful international connections throughout the world, but it is unacceptable to have a situation in which treasures of many nations are transferred onto nations that have no connection to that treasure. They have no connection to the bloodlines, and that causes enormous amount of destabilization and pain and suffering throughout the whole world too, because then there is no stability, there is no predictability of achievement. Like some people may work 30 years and then everything they would have bestowed on their children or grandchildren is transferred to another continent. So that creates rage, not only among people, but God is very angry about that too, because many of those nations that are skimmed of their resources have prayed to God for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So most of those resources are actually property of God that He shares with His people. So it's a very serious situation we have today in the world.